Okay. Well, welcome to Real Talk, creating real conversations for results. I'm John Stoker, the founder and CEO of DialogueWORKS. We provide this course, Real Talk, and others for folks. I'm also the author of the book Overcoming Fake Talk that you can find on Amazon. And what's so interesting about this little webinar is that I've been doing research for another book that hopefully will be titled 7 Conversations Every Leader I Know How to Hold. And so what we're going to talk about today, in my mind, is so important. So this is kind of my brag sheet, if you will. These are organizations across the country that have basically experienced this content. Some you may recognize, like Turner Broadcasting or Honeywell or Comcast Cable or Lockheed Martin. I just want you to know that this is a program that I created and that has been used by a number of organizations to help people learn how to hold difficult conversations. So with that being said, here's some things that I've kind of found that haven't really changed much, but professional development seems to really be in flux still because of COVID, where organizations still, a lot of them back east, still haven't come back to work. And so there's not an opportunity for people to kind of come together and experience training. And yet there are more people, millennials in particular, who are coming and they need help with communication skills, being of a generation that seems to use talking and texting and the phone more. But because of those other two dynamics, there seems to be some real allocation problems with allocating funds for individual development. So those seem to be permeating the organizations that I've dealt with. And so I really want to say that, you know, the whole notion of real talk, and we'll talk about what real talk is in a moment, is more in demand than ever. And with a new generation of people coming to work, there's great support for learning how to communicate more effectively. Excuse me. And consequently, we want to offer a really cost-efficient approach to improve people's skills and their results. So the agenda today, I'm going to talk for a moment about why interpersonal skills and training really matters more than ever before. Then we'll give you a taste of some of the content. And then I'll talk about the course and how you could deliver it or implement it for yourself individually or even for your organization. So that's where we're going. So let's talk about for a moment why interpersonal skills matter. This is our effectiveness model. There are a number of other companies like mine who are out there offering communications or conversations training. And they'll all talk to you about results. Well, we want to do this to get results. And they're right. That's exactly what we want to do. But what's so interesting is they often don't talk about respect and relationship. And yet you can see those blue arrows. They all impact one another. So for example, if you don't respect somebody, will that not impact the quality of the relationship you have with them and the way you create results together? Well, obviously it will. Or if the relationship is really poor, will that poor relationship impact the quality of respect that is or isn't present between you and that other person? And will it impact results? Absolutely it will. In fact, you could even say, well, I'm getting pretty good results with maybe some of the people on my team, but how's respect or how's the relationships with those folks? And if they're lacking, you might say, wow, if the relationship and respect was improved, would the results improve as well? And of course, at the center of respect, results, and relationship is conversation. Conversation, when we usually say, well, what is conversation? People will say something like, well, gosh, conversation is the way we speak, talk, share our experience, our vision, our feelings, our perspective with others. And you'd be right. That's the first definition. But if you go look up the word in the Oxford English Dictionary, what's so interesting is conversation. The second definition states that it's the behavior and conduct from your part to another person. So conversation deals with not only what we say, but also with what we do. And that's a big part of it. And we'll deal with that. And of course, you are at the center of every conversation that you hold. So we at DialogueWORKS have really believed that the reason we teach this content is we want to increase personal and professional effectiveness to basically help people increase their capacity to do those three things, not only to achieve results, but to improve respect and build the quality of relationships. That being the case, some of these statistics that I want to share are actually describe the current situation. Some describe results. They're really quite fascinating. In 2017, there was a survey that was done that identified 99% of employees said they really didn't feel confident to speak up. Somebody repeated it last year, and the number is the same. 33% of employees report that their company culture doesn't support speaking up. Okay, so what that really means is what? If 33% report that their culture is supported, what's going on with the other 67% of companies in terms of their culture not supporting folks? This one was a little shocking. In the healthcare industry, they identified that 80% of medical errors result from miscommunication and results in 400,000 deaths annually and 10,000 complications per day. In fact, I had a surgery on my head for some skin cancer last year, and I made them write on my forehead, here, with an arrow, because of this statistic. In the last decade, the US government has fined banks in our country over $250 billion for unethical behavior that could have been avoided if someone had just spoken up. And a survey that was done last year by Interact, which is another consulting firm, identified that 69% of managers are uncomfortable with giving direct feedback to their employees. And likewise, 85% of employees were unsatisfied with the quality of the communication in their workplace. And then this summer, Gallup identified that, 23% of the employee workforce globally was engaged. But what they didn't emphasize is that the other 67% are not engaged. And they estimated that that results in an $8.8 trillion loss globally annually. So I guess the ones that disturbed me the most of all of those were first the 99% of people not feeling like they can speak up. And then 69, almost 70% of managers admitting that they're uncomfortable giving direct feedback to their employees. That made me think, like, what is going on? And that 67% of people say that their culture is not speaking up. So with all that going on, it's obvious that being able to talk about what matters most, even if it's critical or negative, becomes important to the quality of the results that a business is creating. So, what do people do when they don't speak up? Here's what we kind of identified in some research I did for this new new book that I'm doing, is that people will just kind of keep doing what they're doing, and they waste time and efficiency because they're too afraid to ask if what they're doing actually will help or is what's wanted. And they'll spend a lot of time complaining to others. So there's all kinds of emotional energy that's expelled where people are, can you believe, oh my gosh, what is with this? And I don't know about you, but even today, I still have conversations that I need to hold with some of my folks. And I'll sit and think about them, and I may fret, or should I say this? Should I say that? So that's kind of what people do rather than talking about what matters most. So, why don't people speak up? I love the word fear because for me, it's an acronym for fantasized experience appearing real, which is that people make up in their minds what's going to happen to them in the future with no evidence in the present that it's even going to happen. So I found 10 of these, but here are the top 5 that came from the research in my first book. People will say, well, I can't say that. There could be consequences, or I could get creamed, or, somebody may retaliate. So there's actually a fear of negative consequences. But can you see how if I'm thinking that and I said that to another person, that what I'm doing is projecting into the future something that will happen, and there's no evidence in the present that it's even happened? Now, some people will say, well, it happened to Sally or it happened to Jim, so it could happen to me. But that doesn't mean it will happen to you. Number 2 on the hit parade is I could be ostracized or canceled if I disagree. If my opinion is not what's popular, man, that's kind of close to the first one. Number 3 is always in the top 3. Man, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So if I give them feedback, they may really get their feelings hurt. A lot of people will say, I hate dealing with conflict. So if they think that the other person will get emotional or there'll be big time disagreement, all kind of furious feelings, then they won't speak up. And the last one was interesting to me because in the demographic of the survey we did, people within the age ranges of about 22 to 35 said this one: I want people to like me. And so they wouldn't speak up if they felt like what they were saying would cause them a problem. So notice that for all of us, our perception is reality. If that's what we perceive, then there's a likelihood we might not speak up. Okay, so what is fake talk? It's not, misinformation, but it could be defined in any of these ways. Obviously, the first one is politically correct for lying. So people will intentionally tell an untruth. But the second one, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty guilty of that one. Sometimes I just get so busy or so harried that I'll be vague or unclear. So I might say to my assistant, hey, I really need this by the end of the week. Okay? And Jim, okay. And then guess what happens? I didn't say I needed it Friday by 9:00 sharp so I could discuss the results by 10 with the vice president. So we just, get working and get harried, and we're not being specific in our thinking, and so we're unintentionally vague. Some people will just go along to be agreeable. They don't want to rock the boat and say they don't agree, so they just say, yeah. Or others will focus on what's politically correct. So knowing what's going on with the company, I know this is a sensitive topic, so I'm just kind of focus on that. Or people will just remain silent and they'll withhold what it is that they really think. So for us, fake talk is any conversation that does not achieve the desired results. And I don't know about you, but even with my kids, sometimes this still happens. We have an agreement. I have a teenager and I'll say, well, you do the lawn on Saturday. I'd like it done by 4:00. because we're going to go out to dinner as a family at 5. Will you do it? And it doesn't happen. So that tells me that I engaged in a conversation that didn't get me the desired results. I was respectful, but now we have to go back and hold the conversation again. And I don't know about you, but it happens pretty frequently. So when it does, you know that you've engaged in fake talk. So we went and did some research recently to identify the kind of conversations that most people avoid. And here they are. Maybe they apply to you. If you have an abusive manager, most people are not going to talk to the manager about their behavior. They may talk to their spouse at home, or they may talk to people they're close with, but they'll never confront that individual. They also won't talk to peers who are disrespectful. So if there's a peer who's often cynical or sarcastic or uses a ton of profanity or calls you names or seems to like to make fun of you in meetings, most people will avoid confronting them about that behavior. Probably more likely because they don't know how to do it, or they're afraid there'll be consequences. This one really surprised us. In fact, this is number 1 on the hit parade. Most conversations that people avoid are in talking to poor performers. Now, fancy that. If you had somebody that's working for you and they're not meeting your expectations, you would think that people would step up and say, hey, you're not meeting my expectations. But more often than not, they won't give that feedback, either in hopes of things will improve, right? Or that they will it'll just kind of go away, or maybe they'll get it eventually. But that's probably where the 67% comes in, where their managers don't want to give that feedback to their people. And then there are the folks we just identified who are the conflict dodgers. Anytime there's a chance of emotions, right, furious feelings flying all over the place, and people shouting and yelling and pointing the finger, if there's any of that, they'll dodge that kind of a conversation. And then just in general, feedback of any kind. So I don't know where you are on that. I know that when I have poor performers, I really have to stop and think about it, and craft that conversation in a way that I know that it'll go well. But I think at some point in time, all of us may struggle with one of these 5 types of conversations. So, what's real talk? We're going to talk about that today. But if you're holding conversations that basically are respectful, that build a relationship and get results, our researcher identified these specific areas where things improve. So productivity is increased. And you can see if you look at number 4, work efficiency or effectiveness, if people are clear and specific, then obviously their productivity goes up and you get the results you want the first time. People are more likely to be accountable when they know exactly what's expected. People know how to resolve conflict and they don't run from the emotion. In fact, they lean into it, accelerate through it, and know how to read emotion and what it means and what they ought to do to resolve those kind of conflicts. Obviously, personal and team collaboration increases because people know how to address disagreement. If you work in manufacturing, then safety violations are reduced. And finally, for me, one of the most important ones is employees are engaged. They come to work, they enjoy their work, they contribute, they collaborate, they're positive, and they make great contributions, and they're engaged. So those are kind of the effects. So let me expose some course content to you, teach you some things that might help you today. So let me just begin by talking about what's in the course. There's 8 principles that determine conversational effectiveness. And here's the first 4. Awareness. Awareness is about recognizing the dynamic or what's going on between you and another person. we laugh and say most of the time we're just unconscious about what those dynamics are. So when things blow up, we didn't even see it coming. So the important part of conversation is being aware of what you're doing and the other person is doing. And we like to say that if you can't see it, you can't manage it. The knowledge principle is learning the skills in the actual process for holding a difficult conversation, which I'll share with you in a moment. You know, I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday where I said, if you're not getting results, you're either not doing what you know or you don't know what you're doing. So we're going to solve that today. We're going to teach people a simple 4-step model so that they'll know how to prepare and what to do. Preparation, obviously, is the third principle, where if it's a conversation that is really important and you know that it may cause disagreement or emotion, it's important to sit down, think it through, and prepare it in such a way that when you deliver your message, it'll be heard, there will be no defensiveness, there will be an exchange of thoughts and ideas, it'll be a real dialogue which will end up in a viable solution. Reflection, the reflection principle is about style. All of us have a communication style. And what's so interesting about our style is sometimes my style is not your style. And because my style is very different than your style, I may offend you with no intent to do so. So being able to recognize what a person's style is and understand it for its nuances and then manage that, your style, with regard to another style is really the key to establishing connection and rapport. And that's what we do in that section. The last 4 principles we often refer to as the real skills. So there's the perception principle, but the skill is the ability to recognize and suspend your thinking so that you create openness within yourself to be able to understand and explore others' perspectives. The expression principle is the way that you deliver your message, the words you use, the tone you use, the cadence you use. And so notice that the way we comport ourselves non-verbally, verbally, tonally, is an expression of what it is that you want. Okay, so you'll learn about how do you express and deliver your message in a way that allows people to understand it, to hear it, and to respond to it. Discovery is about asking questions. So what are the types of questions that we can ask that will help gain understanding and clarity in any situation? And finally, the connection principle is about listening and attending to connect. And what's so fun in this section is we have a model that helps you to understand why people get emotional or defensive and what to do to diffuse their defensiveness and understand the violated value that's behind that negative emotional reaction. So those are the principles that the course deals with, okay? So I'm going to deviate a little bit and teach you some things about preparation today and talk about the model so you kind of get a flavor for the kind of stuff that's in the content of the course. So I did some research and identified, I basically have 10,000 people in my database, and I asked them, how many of you people actually prepare for a potentially difficult conversation? 78% responded that they did not. And we wonder why things go awry. So notice if you don't prepare, then you're forced to shoot from the hip, which means, you know, you may not achieve the objective for holding the conversation in the first place. So that's what basically preparation does. Man, it ups your confidence. You know what you're doing. You know where you're going. You have a specific intent that you're trying to achieve, and you're on your way. And that's why we say we do say prepare or beware. We want to eliminate that entirely. Okay, so let's talk about the model. This is in the preparation section. This is our real conversation model. And there are 4 steps to holding any conversation. Initiate, discover, connect, and build. So in initiation, what we do is simply begin the conversation. And there are three things that we do. We want to get the attention of our listener, and then we want to share data or evidence and what it leads us to think. Discovery is about asking questions. Connection is about kind of summarizing what we've heard, making sure that we've been understood and that they've understood us. And building is about coming up with a plan and gaining commitment. So this is our simple 4-step model that you prepare to hold any conversation. So let me give you a quick example. Let's say that I have someone who repeatedly makes fun of me in team meetings. They call me names. Hey, old man. They go, oh, white hair, whatever. And they often lace it with profanity. So I want to hold this conversation, and I'm going to hold it privately, one-on-one. So I would start with what we call an attention check, which I'll teach you in a minute. But it would sound like this. Hey, I'd like to talk about something that's pretty important to me. Can we visit for a minute? What are they going to do? Say no. They go, well, what? Spit it out, spit it out. So then I'm going to share data or evidence and interpretation. Gosh, I noticed that in our meeting today, you referred to me as old man for at least 20 times, and you laughed, and other people laughed as well. I'm wondering if you've ever stopped to think about how that makes me feel. So that's my thinking. I'm going to discover. Have you thought about it? No. Are you saying that it offends you? Yes, I am going to say that it offends me. It makes me really uncomfortable. In fact, why do you think it might offend me? I'm still discovering. Well, because I'm drawing attention to your age. Yeah. And so if you're drawing attention to my age rather than my contribution, what might be the effect of that? So maybe people would challenge your credibility, and they're maybe not paying attention to what it is that you're offering or the quality of your ideas or stuff like that. Yeah. Any other things you can think of? No. So then I'm going to connect. So notice, let me ask one more question. Why do you do it? Oh, I guess it's my way of trying to inflect some humor into our boss's meetings, which are so boring. Okay. Anything you want to ask me? No. So if I understand correctly, you kind of tease and called me old man because it's just your way of kind of lightening the meeting. And yet I shared with you that when you do it, I feel kind of disrespected, and at the same time, I'm worried that people will discount the quality of my contribution and my ideas. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is there anything else I missed or that you want to say? No? So then we go to build. So what can we do going forward where you can eliminate, at least calling me that, and maintain a positive demeanor. And then we talk about it, we come up with a plan, and then I'll gain commitment. So whatever he suggests or says he'll do, then I'll commit him to it. So going forward, this is what you'll do, and I can count on you to do that. And if it happens again, then you know I'm going to want to visit with you and talk again. Okay. So that's it. So here's the thing. Once you learn the 4 steps of this model, you'll always know how to start. You'll always know where you are in the model, and you'll always know when you're done. In fact, when you're done, what you're done with will become the subject for the next conversation if the person doesn't keep their commitment to you. So the model is complete and it's easy to use. So how do we initiate? Let me teach you some things about initiation. Here's the first step in initiation. The first thing you want to do is clarify your own assumptions. So if I was doing this on myself in the situation I just shared with you, what am I thinking or believing and feeling about the person I have to talk to? Well, I'm thinking that he's a real jerk and I'm feeling angry and frustrated. And then I'm going to flip it and say, okay, what are they thinking, believing, and feeling about me? Well, I know I'm guessing here, but maybe I'm thinking, gosh, maybe they think I like being teased, or maybe that's their way of putting me down. And I guess they're feeling okay about it because they keep doing it. So notice in preparation, this initiation helps me, even though I'm guessing, understand what may be going on with them. But more importantly, if I look to myself and I recognize that I'm feeling angry and frustrated, and I believe this person is a jerk, I might even think that they're intentionally doing this, to kind of belittle me. If I identified that for myself, the next step would be for me to say, you know what? I really don't know that they're intentionally doing this. It's irritating, yes, but I really don't know what's going on behind it. So if I can identify that assumption, I can check it. This is a way of giving myself a chill pill because I'm surfacing my thinking and my feeling. And in doing so, hopefully, the thinking will be in question and the feeling will drop or will be eased. And why do I want that to happen? Because if I'm thinking the person's a jerk and I'm just angry and frustrated, if I carry that in to hold this conversation, I'll guarantee you it will not go well. So this is a way of checking yourself, challenging your assumptions before you begin the conversation. Okay? Step 2, in holding a difficult conversation, the first thing that you want to do is identify your intent. What is it you want? What's the purpose for holding the conversation? Years ago, I decided I needed to give my son Bryson feedback over the fact that he got a D- in his Chinese class. And I thought to myself, what do I want to have come out of this conversation? And I thought, you know what? I want to guilt him so badly that he'll never not do his homework again. And then I laughed at myself and thought, that's pretty easy. But what do I really want? And I thought, I want him to learn how important it is to take responsibility for himself and do the work that's required. So when it comes times for grades, those grades reflect his effort. So I had to spend some time really thinking for quite a while about how I was going to frame this conversation so I would get positive results. So notice this is important because if you don't have a clear-cut purpose or intent, then it really doesn't matter where the conversation goes. That's why I like that quote at the bottom. If you don't know what you want, it really doesn't matter what you get. So this is about saying, what do I want to have happen or change in this conversation? And this is important because you will use in creating what we call an attention check. An attention check is your opportunity to gain the attention of the person. And the way you create it is to state your intention and then ask a question. So I'd like to talk about representing the company well. Can we talk about it? Now, when you create one of these, it's important that your attention check is either neutral or positive. So in the situation that I shared with you, The last thing I want to do is say, I'd like to talk about how you're a real jerk in our team meetings. Can we talk? Because if I said that, the person will be defensive from the get-go. And you know that it will not go well. But if I said to him, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about that concerns me personally. Can we talk? Notice the can we talk is kind of the hook. And it has the effect of going, well, yeah, we can talk. So I put some in here to show, and I hope that you'll give me a thumbs up if you can hear the audio on these. They should come through. This is Christian, and Christian is going to start a conversation in a way that's not very good. So I want you to listen to what Christian says, and then maybe together you can come up with an attention check, if you unmute yourselves, that would be better than what Christian says. Okay, let's listen to it. It's not very long, maybe 20 seconds. Check this out.
I want to talk about how you're a lying dog and you can't be counted on for it.
Not very loud. Let me turn up the volume.
Anything. Can we talk about that?
Let me play it again for you.
I want to talk about how you're a lying dog and you can't be counted on for anything. Can we talk about that?
Okay, so notice he used it, but he's pretty defensive. He's going to create defensiveness. So what would you say instead? I'd like to talk about, what would you say? Anyone? Therese or Donovan?
Yeah, if we're going positive, then like to talk about how we can frame your frame your statements to be accepted or more believable, or something like that.
Yeah, and then to end it with a question. Can we talk about it?
Can we talk about that?
Yeah. If they don't answer, then you got to ask the question. Because even if I said to either of you, wow, I want to talk about something with you that's really important to me. Can we talk? Doesn't that create some curiosity? And they're going to go, well, yeah. Well, what do you want to talk about? Now, sometimes people will say, well, it kind of feels like manipulation. No, all I want is the person's attention. So let's say I have somebody in my team meeting who uses a lot of poor choice of language. In fact, I counted that they dropped 32 F-bombs in a 20-minute meeting. And several of the people came to me after the meeting and shared with me that they were really offended by that kind of language. So I have to talk to this person. So I'm not going to run out and tell them to their face that they were inappropriate, but I'm going to use an attention check that sounds maybe something like this. Hey, I'd like to talk about the importance of the way we treat each other in meetings. Can we talk? So notice, I'm not accusing them of anything. I'm not using a you. I'm just generally saying I'd like to talk about, the way we treat each other. Can we talk? And then we'll be off to the races. So Christian does a better job second time around. See what it is that you like about this.
I'd like to talk about our commitments to each other. Can we do that?
Better?
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see that that's better. Neutral tone. Hey, I'd like to talk about our commitments to each other. Can we talk? So there's no chance of creating defensiveness in your listener. And now that you've got their attention, okay? So here are some situations that I've identified that I think are pretty common. Be interested to see if you can come up with an attention check. Your manager is constantly changing priorities without telling you. Consequently, you never meet your manager's expectations. So if you were using an attention check on him or her, what might it sound like? You want a shot? Give it a shot? What do you think, Therese?
I'm thinking.
I see
Well,
preparation is key here.
That's right.
Yes.
But notice, this is classic because this, this kind of stuff
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk about what would be the topic?
How I can best meet your expectations.
Question? Can we talk? Just ask the question, because that's the hook. So if you ask them, hey, I'd like to talk about expectations, and you get the deer in the headlight looks, can we talk? I mean, it kind of acts as a hook, and it lightens the situation. So yeah, it's exactly what I'd say. I'd like to talk about how I can meet your expectations every time. Can we do that? Right? It's like, well, who wouldn't be interested in that? Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. One of your team members uses a lot of profanity. I guess I already ruined that one. In team meetings, several other team members have mentioned that they are offended by this person's language. So I'll give you this one. I'd like to talk about building increased respect on our team. Can we do that? Now, notice these are very short, but not being used to doing them, they require some thought on your part. So here's another one. A team member has been late with the numbers you need to finish an assigned report for your manager. So you want to talk about that. It's happened twice, let's say, in the last week and a half. So what would you say? I'd like to talk about, what do you think?
I would think something kind of general as well. Like I'd like to talk about commitments that we have with each other. Can we do that?
Yeah, that's it. Simple as that. Simple as that. Let's see. Is there another one? What did I say?
Maybe timeline.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about a timeline for some stuff we're working on. Can we talk? All right, I want to talk about how important your work is to me. So notice that's a little interesting because I'm telling them how important they are. But what's important is I really believe that what begins well ends well. And what we have a tendency to do, unfortunately, when we go to hold these conversations, let's say I gave you the task of doing a report for me and you handed it to me, and gosh, the paper had some kind of grease on it, and there was like 30 typos in the first 2 pages. And yeah, we have the tendency to want to go and say, hey, that report you gave me today, it stunk, man. It was terrible. We have a tendency to want to lead with a judgment or an opinion or, a conclusion. And doing that creates defensiveness, which means the person is going to do anything, say anything they have to defend their poor performance. And we don't want that to happen. And so starting well will increase the likelihood that these conversations will go well. Here's another one. A member of your team has been late every day this week. You held a conversation about this 2 weeks ago, but nothing has changed. So what would you say?
Yeah, this one they might know, right away where you're going for. So maybe you would still say, hey, I'd like to just have a checkup about that discussion we had a couple weeks ago. Could we meet?
Can we talk? Yeah. But notice you just stated that, Donovan, with a great tone. If you're not coming down on someone with their tone, hey, I'd like to talk about something that's I don't particularly enjoy. Can we talk? And you could get away with saying that. I need to check something out with you. Can we talk?
Mm-hmm.
Notice really what you're doing. You just want their attention. Then you share data and interpretation. So that's a little taste of content. So let me talk about how we deliver and implement this kind of a course. So we deliver it either live in person, like on site, or live virtually, like we're doing today. Okay. And we have flexible delivery. We have a 2-day version of this class. We have a 1-day version of this class. And we also have a half day. I hate doing the half day, but that kind of came out of COVID. And in terms of how people want it, some people want to do, if they wanted to do a 1-day, they may want it all in 1 day. Some people have said, well, let's do half a day, 4 hours 1 day, and half a day the next day. Okay. I had another client that said, can we just do like 2.5 hours a day for 4 or 5 days in a row? And that's fine. So we always set up the class, in a way that works for the client. And we do the same thing virtually. So if not everybody was in the room, we wanted to do a virtual class, whether it's 2 days or 1 day or a half day, we make it work for whatever the client wants to do. Some people want to learn how to teach the class. And so they want to do a certification. We offer that as well, and we'll do it virtually. But what's important is that they attend a class so they can see it, whether it's on site or open enrollment, virtual or live. And then we ask the person, we spend some time going through content, usually a day. We ask them to prepare a piece and then to present to us. Okay, so our training, really, we want to engage the audience. So we have video like the one you just saw. We also have author videos. Believe it or not, I had people tell me, gosh, you tell the story so much better, or to explain the concept so much better. Man, why don't you record yourself? So that's what we did. I recorded myself on 10 of probably the most challenging concepts and put it into the training, and it's embedded in the slides. So everything that we do is to practice some kind of a concept that individuals are learning so that they can apply it. There's a self-assessment that people take before the training so they can get a read on kind of what their conversation skills and abilities are. And then we try to apply individually applications and group applications in a way that helps people learn the concepts. The manual has at the end of it an action planning guide. This is the first page of it. It's usually 4 pages long. So at every turn in the training, when we finish a unit, I have people come here and identify something they want to remember that's important to them in terms of improving their own ability to communicate more effectively. And right out of the chute, we ask people to identify a challenging conversation that they want to work on during the course of the course. So everything they learn can be applied to something they're preparing to kind of hold. So they walk out with something they can do. And obvious in individual applications, we have role play where we'll identify a situation that's kind of a pretty typical of a tough conversation. And we'll divide people into threes, and one will play the role of the speaker, the person who's using the model to hold the conversation. One person will be the inner responder, the person they're interacting with, and one people will be the coach. And so they all have the same scenario. This one just gives them the attention check and they're off to the races using the model. The responder has a little bit of a script they can use if they want to respond in a certain way. And the coaching role has some things that they could look at that will help the person. So what's really important for us is that people learn to master the skills and the principles that we're learning, and we have these to do just that. So we have a simplified leader's guide that's more efficient. You can see here's the cover of it. The slides for the training are in here with points that need to be made. So people who are certifying to train can see the slides. There's places for notes that they can take when we're talking through key concepts so that they can basically adapt it. There's a slide of me talking about something, a little video icon down there. I'm explaining something. If the person decides they don't want to explain it, so they can play the video of me or they can skip them, whatever. So we put, like I said, 10 new expert videos around tough topics. And then there are videos with actors that are real situations that have happened to me over my career that we wrote into videos. And the videos are all embedded into the slides, just like the one you saw. So, it's already queued up. You can queue it up yourself. You can play it. You can pause it. You can skip it all together if you want to, but they're all embedded in the presentation. So in taking the course comes with a pre-work self-assessment and the opportunity to identify a tough conversation. People get a copy of my book, Overcoming Fake Talk. They get the participant manual. They get tool cards. These tool cards have the principles of the course and what was taught that, people can look through, or some people put them on their desk. They want to look at it like the model card. There are audio recordings on my website that we help people access. There's like about 12 hours of content on audio that people can download to a tablet or to a phone that tell different stories than are in the course or in the manual. And there's even skills in the audio recordings that aren't in the course. And then there's follow-up support. There's what we call cues and do's. So once a person has gone through the course, they start to get a series of 12 email lessons that come every other week for 24 weeks. So there's 12 of them. And there's cues, things to look for. And then there's a list of do's, things that you might try. And then we have a Real Talk app that's for iOS and Android that people can download. It's an opportunity to pull up the app with the model in it to create a conversation that you're getting ready to prepare. Got a lot of feedback from people who are basically commuting on the train or, sitting in some kind of a boring meeting, and they wanted to prepare a conversation. They whipped out the app and prepared it ahead of time so they were prepared to hold the conversation. So why Real Talk? It has a simplified model that makes holding difficult conversations easy, a simple 4-step process that we know works that you can learn and use immediately. We also have content in the course on emotional intelligence. It centers around conflict resolution, so you'll learn some things about EQ and how to solve problems. Economical delivery, facilitation of participant costs, either in a half-day, 1-day, or a 2-day version, depending on what you want. We'll do it in person or virtually, and we'll even certify you virtually if you're wanting to certify it to teach it within your company. So question I have is, how can we serve you? If you're ready for certification, you want a proposal, you want to go through the content in more detail, you want to help with rolling out delivery, in an organization wide. Now, I assume that both of you signed up on the registration page. So if you want to type in the chat, interested, I'll reach out to you and talk about what your interest is, whether it's just for yourself or for your organization. The only thing I would say is, if all you do is type interested in the chat right now, if that's all you do, make sure that you gave us your real email and your real phone number, because that's all we have. So some people sometimes type in a phone number 000-000-000. Obviously, I can't reach out and talk to you. But if you're interested individually or for your team or for your organization, I'll make you a deal that you can't refuse. So let me know if that's of interest to you. Let me stop the recording, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay.